We discard 6 kilograms of plastic, paper, and other disposables every second. 400 kilograms every minute. And 23,000 kilograms every hour. The problem will only get bigger and bigger and bigger. The question is, who's going to face it? Say yes to reusables. Say yes to waste less.
Hi and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akila from WWF-Singapore and I'm your host for today. Thank you for joining us today virtually, and we do hope that we'll see each other physically very soon. So the video that we just showed was produced by NEA as part of the Say Yes to Waste Less campaign, and I'm sure it resonated with everyone here when the video mentions how much single-use waste we throw out per minute here in Singapore. So today's session will focus on waste in Singapore and specifically how we can achieve circularity in retail. Now, before we begin today's session, I'd like to draw your attention to some housekeeping matters. Now, please note that all participants will automatically be on mute. However, we are happy to address any questions you may have related to the study or panel discussion. You may post the questions via the Q&A function. You'll see a little black toolbox appearing at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we've highlighted here particularly which functions you can click on. Now, please note that this event is also being recorded and the recording will be distributed to all registrants post-event together with the study and other further reading materials. Today, we are honored to have with us guest speakers to deliver the opening remarks and keynote speech. You will also get an exciting first look into our new study, Circularity in Retail. We will close with a specially curated panel discussion with business leaders in the retail industry. Now, we hope everyone here will walk away with insights and opportunities that each stakeholder can take to achieve circularity in retail. Now, if you wish to refer to a detailed agenda, my colleague Chester will be posting a link in the chat for your reference. I would now like to welcome our Raghunathan, Chief Executive Officer of WWF Singapore, to kick us off and deliver the opening remarks. Now, if you could please unmute and turn on your video, please, Raghu. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Akila. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Lendlease and all the stakeholders who provided valuable insights and support for this report. Our partnership with Lendlease is part of our successful Plastics Action or PAC program, which has helped local businesses avoid 85 million pieces of plastic items and packaging annually. The recent Earth Overshoot Day on 29th July reminds us that the annual demand for resources exceeds the amount that a planet can regenerate within the same year. This means that we have to change the way we produce, consume, and manage our waste to tackle the climate crisis. To do this study, the WWF team went on the ground to look at and analyze the shopping malls' back-of-house operations and waste management processes. We interviewed stakeholders like retail tenants, waste contractors, and asset managers to develop our recommendations. As one of the largest generators of waste in Singapore, the retail sector has a critical role in advancing circularity. I'm happy to state that this study identifies important solutions that industry can adopt easily. WWF Singapore will further engage various stakeholders to improve their processes, trial pilot solutions, and scale successful initiatives to support meaningful change in waste management. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Raghu, for your kind words, and we are certainly looking forward to the launch of the report today. So we now have Xue Ling, Singapore Managing Director and Asia Chief Investment Officer of Lendlease, to also deliver her opening remarks. Now, if you could please unmute and turn on your video, Xue Ling, all yours.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Kaur, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. It's my pleasure to launch the inaugural Waste in Retail Research Initiative today in collaboration with Lendlease and the WWF-Singapore Plastic Action, which is PACT. As Singapore moves towards becoming a zero waste nation, we hope that this initiative will help us look at how our malls can improve our efforts towards a waste reduction and circular economy strategy. While research and guidance for the industry are available, this initiative comes at a time when an in-depth analysis specific to Singapore's mall typology is much needed to facilitate progress. The retail sector is one of the largest generators of waste in Singapore, accounting for about 7% of the country's total waste in 2019. We recognize that a key barrier to improving overall waste reduction is a lack of available data and reduction targets. This has limited our understanding of waste issues at the tenant level, and at the same time, tenants may not always be aware of how much waste they may be generating. We have taken one of the first steps to filling that knowledge and data gap. There's still a lot to go. Though through this study, we identify priority interventions that could bring some impactful systemic changes. We also explore solutions that could be scalable and incentivize broader participation in waste management. At Lendlease, we aim to tackle the climate crisis head-on by minimizing the impact of climate change on livelihoods and ecosystems around the world. This is why we have launched Mission Zero, a decarbonization roadmap to reach net zero carbon emission by 2020, a very ambitious target, and absolute zero by 2040. These reduction targets are the most ambitious in our industries by far, and we understand we cannot do this alone. We see the initiative as an opportunity to create a platform to build on insights and exchange ideas with all our stakeholders and partners in the retail sector ecosystem, to deliberate and deepen the conversations on how waste reduction can help reduce emissions and contribute to Singapore's vision of a zero waste nation. Further to the conclusion of the study, we will continue to expand the scope of the initiative and study how solutions can be further refined and implemented at scale. Together with WWF Singapore, we are excited and committed to expand the collaboration with all of you here, our peers, stakeholders, government agencies, to highlight retail-specific challenges, raise capacity on waste management, and create innovative solutions together that will create new value from waste and ensure our communities thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Xue Ling, for your remarks and reiterating the importance of industry action and stakeholder collaboration to tackle waste in retail. Now, Singapore launched its Zero Waste Master Plan in 2019 and the Singapore Green Plan earlier this year. These two plans underscores the importance for the nation to be resource efficient and have a circular approach for waste management. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Amy Khor, Senior Minister of State for Sustainability and the Environment, to deliver the keynote speech. Due to conflicting schedules, she is joining us today via a pre-recorded message instead.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me start by congratulating WWF-Singapore and Lendlease on the launch of the Circularity in Retail study, which seeks to understand the challenges faced by the retail property management industry in waste management and uncover opportunities to reduce waste and adopt a circular economy strategy in retail operations. The study supports Singapore's Zero Waste Master Plan, which maps out key strategies to build a sustainable, resource-efficient, and climate-resilient nation, and adopt a circular economy approach to waste and resource management. The master plan focuses on 3 key waste streams, namely electrical and electronic waste, or e-waste in short, packaging waste including plastics, and food waste. Under the Singapore Green Plan 2030, launched by the government earlier this year, we hope to achieve a 20% reduction in waste sent to our Semakau landfill by 2026. This front-loads the target of reducing 30% of our waste sent to landfill by 2030, set earlier under the master plan. What does it take for Singapore to become a zero-waste nation? We need to move from a linear approach of make, use, and throw to a circular economy one of reusing and recycling resources for as long as possible. By doing so, not only will we reduce waste and conserve precious resources, we will also generate new jobs and business opportunities for our people. Malls and retail businesses play an integral role in Singapore's journey towards becoming a zero-waste nation. Large shopping malls collectively contributed to about 7% of total waste discarded in Singapore in 2019. To draw management attention to and bring about greater awareness on the amount of waste produced by commercial premises, mandatory waste reporting was introduced in 2014 by the National Environment Agency, or NEA. Large shopping malls with net lettable area of more than 4,600 square meters are required to report their waste data and waste reduction plans. Since then, we have seen a 13% decrease in waste generated in malls, from 52 kilograms per square meter in 2014 to 45 kilograms per square meter in 2019. The recycling rate has also increased from 6.7% to 11.4%. These positive results are indeed very encouraging. Shopping malls are also an important part of our new nationwide e-waste management system that was launched on 1st July this year. This new system, which is based on the Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR approach, ensures that e-waste is managed effectively and efficiently, and that the public can recycle their e-waste conveniently. Malls can support this nationwide effort by providing space for the placement of e-waste recycling bins in their premises. Large retailers of electrical and electronic equipment are also a key touch point, as they provide in-store take-back services for the e-waste regulated under the EPR scheme. I'm glad to note that the e-waste bins can be found in Lendlease's malls, namely GEM, Parkway Parade, and PLQ Mall. Packaging waste, such as plastic bags, disposable cups, and takeaway containers, is another waste stream that malls and their tenants can focus on. Under the Say Yes to Waste Less campaign, the NEA worked with close to 100 commercial partners, covering more than 2,100 premises, to encourage consumers to bring reusables and decline disposables for takeaways and online food orders. This is an example of how organizations can do their part to reduce waste. I encourage mall operators to engage their tenants to minimize the use of disposable packaging where possible and consider displaying signs within their malls to nudge shoppers to bring their own shopping bags and other reusables. An interesting insight gleaned from the Circularity in Retail Studies findings is the significant difference that mall operators can make by actively engaging their tenants. By conducting educational talks to emphasize the importance of food waste reduction and recycling, and engaging F&B tenants on food waste segregation, Lendlease has seen PLQ malls' food waste recycling rate triple from 10% to 35% within the past year. Mall operators and retail businesses can also pursue sustainability by incorporating sustainable practices into their operations, building organizational awareness through engagement and training, and adopting a green procurement policy. They can also refer to the NEA's 3R guidebook for shopping malls to implement and improve on their 3R programs. For example, Lendlease conducted a review of its waste data in 2018 and 2019 to identify areas for improvement. The review helped to identify that the drop in volume of recyclables from its malls was due to a decrease in amount of paper and plastic recycled. Lendlease was then able to take the necessary actions to address this. I also encourage shopping malls to leverage new technologies to reduce waste generation and increase recycling. To improve the efficiency of recording its waste data, PLQ Mall introduced a QR code system where each tenant is assigned a unique QR code for waste disposal. This has enabled the mall to identify the amount of waste generated by each tenant and minimize errors and the time taken for manual recording. I hope other shopping malls will adopt similar initiatives. To conclude, I thank WWF-Singapore and Lendlease for leading sustainability in their own capacities and collaborating on this study. I hope that the findings will be a useful reference for the retail sector on how they can inculcate the 3R culture into their businesses. As shoppers, we can play a part too by bringing our own reusable bags and containers and choosing to support sustainable businesses. No effort is too small, and collectively, we can make a difference. I wish everyone a most fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, SMS Dr. Amy Kaur, for your time to deliver those inspiring words, as well as for your call to action to businesses and consumers to take action. Next, we have Dr. Yvonne Lin, materials expert of WWF Singapore. Now, over the past year, Yvonne has led the study together with Lendlease, and in her presentation, she'll be giving everyone a first look at the key findings of the study and the key priority interventions we identified as critical for the industry moving forward to achieve circularity. Yvonne, please.
Thank you, Akila. A very good afternoon to everyone. And also thank you, Dr. Amy Ko, for the wonderful opening and for touching on so many of the important learnings and findings that we have highlighted in this report. Waste management within a shopping mall may seem very complex due to the diversity of the retail categories and the many different stakeholders involved. However, as you will learn from the Circularity in Retail report, the waste produced within malls are relatively homogeneous and quite predictable according to the retail categories. This report contains quite a fair bit of learnings. So in the view of time, what I would like to do is to highlight certain points from the report in today's presentation, while I strongly encourage you to go through the report and see if there's any potential for potential collaborations and approach us. So what we will start when we started this study, we started by first looking at the waste data. This is actually very important because as you know that we do not know what is the problem until we see the problem. So what is good in the Lendlease mall is that for the past years, Lendlease has already started doing a very good waste collections among its 3 retail malls. So we were actually able to analyze a very good waste data collections in 2018 and 2019. But the shortcoming of these 2 years of waste data was that it comes in a monthly, how much was being generated, how much has been recycled. We are actually unable to identify exactly which tenants is throwing out how much and which tenants have been actively doing segregations. So we are very lucky that the Lendlease newest mall, Paya Lebar Quarter, PLQ Mall, actually started this automated waste QR code system, which Dr. Amy has kindly highlighted earlier on. So just to give you a little bit look on what this is happening is that this is actually a setup in the bin center in the PLQ Mall. So each tenant has been given their own QR code. So when the tenant staff came down to the bin center to put away their waste, whether is it general waste or recyclables, they will have to scan the QR code and indicate when they weigh the item, the trash, whether is it a general waste or plastics or paper recycling. This would then automatically record the amount that has been discarded at that point. And because of that, this really removes a lot of manual recording, which results in error and also unnecessary man hours. And excuse me, because of this good system, we were actually able to look at who are the retail categories that has been producing quite a high volume of waste. And we have identified fashion, food court, and supermarkets as the 3 categories that we would like to go deeper into. And we actually focus mainly on plastic packaging waste when we look at these 3 retail categories, mainly because plastics is actually a really complex material. It comes in all sorts of form, but not all kind of plastic packaging can be recycled. So what we really did is we go on to the ground level, we visit their premises, we go and really observe what are the different types of plastic packaging that comes in, and we try to identify what can and what cannot be recycled. And while we are there, we actually took the opportunity to also interview the different key stakeholders, namely the Lendlease asset operations managers, also the tenants and the waste contractor. We need to know what is their roles and responsibilities and what are their kind of different pain points and challenges when they are carrying out their waste management duties. And also while we were there, we also took the opportunity to look at the physical layout. So things like what are the space issues, if any, in the bin center, and also kind of the space constraint in the back of house. We also look at what are the kind of circulars that the ops teams have been sharing with the tenants and etc. So of course, earlier in the start of the study, we also look at what are the local and global best practices in the waste management in the retail and any other relevant sectors. So before I go into the findings, I will not touch too much on the waste data that we have collected because it's quite a fair bit. What I'll do here is actually just want to highlight that the Lendlease average recycling rate is 28.9%. This is actually higher than the national average of 11.4%. And this is some of the best practices that we have observed when we were at the Lendlease malls. And then I would like to quickly just touch on it with you. So the first one that we see is that there is a very efficient segregation in the Lendlease malls, particularly for the paper and cardboard and also the used cooking oil. This is because the Lendlease housekeeping staff has been going for a door-to-door collection once to twice a day. So this really brings a lot of convenience to the Lendlease tenants and also ensuring that the recyclables are actually segregated very well. And also having an in-house food digester definitely help to divert the food waste from the general waste that's sent for incineration. The second point that we observe is that there is a very effective monitoring system in place. So at the bin center, what we observe is that the waste contractor has already employed an employee, a worker, to specially station within the bin center so that when the tenants do come down to put away their trash, the employee is able to act as like a gatekeeper to look at whether the segregations has been done well or if there is more that can be done. So this also allows the waste collections to ensure that they have a very good quality recyclables that is being segregated. And this is actually very important to ensure that, you know, the recycling, that there is a very good recycling potential and value to it. So the third point that of a very good practice that we observe in the land lease is that there is a clear communications of the tenants' waste management obligations. And this starts right from the beginning when they sign their tenancy lease. So the tenants' obligations are contractually stated clearly. What do they need to do in the lease agreement? What we also observe is that the asset ops team has been giving instructions in hard copy to the tenants on how to carry out the correct food waste segregations. Tours of the bin center for tenants was also carried out from time to time. This allowed the tenants to have a clear understanding of what are the bin centers facilities are available for them to use. And the land lease asset ops team has also been doing very frequent physical visits to the tenants to build rapport with them. And also this allows a very good efficient feedback channel for the tenants to the asset ops to feedback if they have any on the waste management system. And then lastly, of course, in terms of reminders, in terms of circulars to the tenants. So in this slide, I would just like to kind of summarize what are the kind of recyclables compositions that we would be able to find in a retail mall. And in this table here, it also just summarizes where usually these recyclables can come from. So as you can see from this graph over here, the kind of recyclables that has a very good recycling rate right now is the paper and of course the food waste. I would like to note at this point that this composition of the recyclables is really dependent on the tenancy mix of a retail mall. So if you have a more F&B's tenants, then I mean the food waste might be a bit higher than usual. And if you don't really have certain tenants where they bring in a lot of bulk products in cardboard boxes, for example, then maybe the paper will not be so much. So based on this graph and also the on-site observations, we see the opportunities to increase the recycling rates from food waste, metal, glass, and plastics. You might be wondering that the food waste is actually, you know, quite a good recycling rate already right now. So I will touch on a bit later on where this can be in fact further improved. And of course, metal, glass, and plastics, as right now you can see that there is a lot of room for improvement. So I'll just go straight into a summary of the findings and then the interventions that we have identified. We can come in with a very good opportunity to further improve the waste management system in a retail mall. As I already have mentioned at my start of the presentation, so a waste data monitoring system is a very important key to identify what are the, where are your waste coming from, what is your waste composition like, which one has the most generated. Then with all this information, then are we able to tackle and look at what are the most impactful actions that we can carry out to kind of improve the whole system. So having that lack of data, the tenants were actually not aware of how much waste that they are really generating. And as such, they also would not be able to compare with their peers in the similar retail categories. So the opportunity that we suggest, as we can see in this diagram over here, as we have already introduced earlier on the QR code system in the PLQ, that is actually a very excellent start already. But what this can be further improved is to be able to generate a statement, which we now call it a waste statement. It's really very similar to a utility bill that we receive monthly. So what the tenant will then see is probably like for that month, how much general waste they have discarded, how much have they segregated. And then also in a table like this, we can kind of show what is the kind of average that the other tenants are producing in the similar retail category. And then based on this kind of information, both the assets ops teams and the tenants would then be able to set very meaningful and measurable targets on how to further reduce their waste and increase their recycling rates. So the second point, the intervention that we are suggesting here in this report is to reduce the waste at source by targeting high volume waste categories. This is actually not an easy thing to do. We have quite a few ways inside in the report, but for here, I'll just single out this single-use food packaging as a discussion over here. So the challenge is that single-use food packaging are contaminated with food and cannot be recycled. So even in the situation where the retailer has used a recyclable packaging to hold the food content, you find that this is still not considered as recyclable. So some opportunities, of course, would then be, in the long term, be able to switch to a reusable ones for dine-in. Of course, we are very mindful that there are malls and also certain F&B outlets that have problems with having in-house or a centralized washing facilities. So this is something that would probably take a while for some of the F&B outlets. The other way for those takeaway, then we would kind of recommend looking at alternative packaging materials that has a lower environmental impact. The third one, which I would really like to share a bit more, which I think NEA right now has already started this Bring Your Own Container campaign earlier this year, and it is really a very wonderful campaign. But what happened is that as a lot of own brands companies, as they came up with some form of incentives and discounts to the customers, what we are suggesting here is that from the retail malls as a whole, to give that incentives or a reward system. Because imagine a shopper coming into the mall, he or she will know that, I'm not just buying from one tenant in the mall. I'll probably be buying some takeaway food. I'll also go to another drink store to buy a drink, and then I'm going to do some shopping where I buy some clothing from another shop. So if the shoppers is aware that, with one shopping mall, I can earn points from 3 different shops, I think that would incentivize the shoppers even more and plan that, I'm going down to this mall right now, I'm going to bring this container, I'm going to bring my own bag. And I think that would be probably an even bigger driver than knowing that only probably one brand in a retail mall has that kind of incentive for bring your own. So the third interventions that I would like to touch on is to increase the recycling rates by targeting high volume recyclables. So as we have, I just mentioned just now, so the why food waste, there is still room for improvement, because we do realize that up to 10% of additional food waste from the malls can be diverted. And how do we know this? Is because from the observations and the interviews, we do realize that there is a lot of F&B outlets that are not being consistent in carrying out this food waste segregation. And they do face quite a bit of challenge. Firstly, most of the F&B outlets that are located at the upper levels find it very inconvenient to bring the food waste down to the bin center, which is in the basement. And this is kind of understandable, because, and also imagine the kind of hygiene conditions that, when you are pushing a food waste bin from such a upper level all the way to the bin center in the basement, there's quite a distance that you have to travel. And as I mentioned also just now, similar to the washing facilities, there's always probably some kind of a lack of space in the back of house that cannot put a separate recycling bin just for food waste. And in this COVID situation, unfortunately, which is also another hygiene issue that's very important. So some tenants are unwilling to segregate post-consumer food waste due to hygiene reasons. So what kind of opportunities do we have for these very tough challenges is that, firstly, since the Lendlease housekeeping staff has already been doing a door-to-door collections, we would recommend that this food waste can also be included from in the door-to-door collections. But of course, by investing in a well-sealed food waste container, so as to minimize kind of smell that as you transport the food waste from point A to point B. But by asking the housekeeping staff to do that, this will directly kind of increase also their workload. And we do know that pushing the trolleys around can be very physically tiring. So in terms of electronics or technology that we can invest is to look at some kind of like electric trolleys, which can be controlled either directly by the housekeeping staff, or it can be even a self-drive one, but of course with the staff following close by. Then this will really help to reduce the kind of physical pushing that will otherwise tire out the housekeeping staff. Another technology that has been used overseas but not so often seen in Singapore is to install a kind of food waste sink grinder. As you can see over here, this kind of grinder is actually installed right under the sink. And when the during the food preparations, the inedible parts or the parts that has been cut off and not used for cooking can be poured down into the sink here and then grind. What's the advantage of this is that it helps to reduce the volume of the food waste and reduce the amount of space that you need to store them. And of course, in future, for future buildings, this can be even extended to ensure that the food waste sink grinders have the pipings that can be made directly to connect to the bin centers in the basement. Then that would even eliminate the need for the housekeeping staff to go door-to-door collections. And the other recyclables that I would like to focus on is on the metal, glass, and then the plastics. For these three materials, I'm really focusing on the food packaging kind of metal, glass, and plastics. So they are having very low recycling rates because we observe that they are contaminated with food, and not all of them are being easy to empty. So there's really a lot of steps that we have to educate the tenants or even shoppers before you can actually recycle this kind of packaging. So I will only touch on the ones that is actually easier to be emptied out. So if you're interested in how we can touch on those containers, food containers that are more sticky and viscous, how do you deal with them, please go to the report. We do address them in there. So what happened is that we can have this kind of like infographics being placed at very strategic positions to tell these shoppers or even tenants that this plastic drinks bottle have to be emptied out before you put it into the recycling bin here. And of course, what happened is that things like straws is actually also not recyclable. They have to be thrown away. So these are the little details that can be simplified into this kind of infographics and placed in, for example, since a sink is needed, this can be placed at the toilets, for example, and the plastic recycling bin can be placed also very near to the toilet, so that once the shoppers empty out the content, they can easily put it into the plastic recycling bins there. And also the fact that right now, everyone notice a lot of recycling bins, their labels right now are being labeled as paper, plastics, metals, and glass. This is actually not wrong, but the problem is that you will then notice that actually a lot of things are actually not recyclable, but they are paper, for example. And then when a shopper put a paper into a paper recycling bin, you contaminate what can be recycled. But if you also think about it closely, there's actually very little paper packaging products in a shopping mall that can be recycled, that is recyclable, and that is not greasy, not come in food contact, and etc. So having that bin in the common corridor is also a problem, because you end up collecting a general waste instead. So the plastics one, for example, instead of calling it plastic, be very specific, and we can call it like collecting just PET bottles and transparent cups like this, so that people are very clear, because sometimes also food wrappers can get into the plastic bins, but they are actually not totally pure plastics. They are actually a mixture of materials. So this having a packaging type as a labeling would actually help in also improving the kind of recyclable segregations that we have. And very quickly, lastly, is just to also talk about plastics again, because besides those plastics that's being used for food, there is also a very significant amount that is being used for clothing and any other kind of packagings. So here the focus is really on the fashion industries. We do find that more can be done in this area, and also because a lot of times the plastics poly bags that's being used in the fashion industries, people have that idea that it's not recyclable. Actually, it's not. It is recyclable, and they do have a lot of value because it is very clean and it's really very consistent. So, but the thing is that because it's so lightweight, so I mean, it's unavoidable that once you have one poly bag, you will just put it in somewhere, just to, and even just go into the general waste, and rather than having it flying around and become a litter. So what we really see as an opportunity is to having look at really strategic locations again, like where the unpacking is being done, and place the plastic recycling bins, say for example, behind the cashier, because sometimes people do take new items from the shop, and when the plastics is poly bags being unwrapped, then the cashier can actually quickly stuff that poly bag into a small bin right at their cashier. And at the end of the day, have someone gather all these plastics wrappers from the different locations around the shop before bringing it down to the bin center. And of course, to be able to do that, you really need some kind of SOP to know where to put this and how to do it, and what are the things that can be recycled and segregated. So this is where, again, corporate head office, we find that if they are able to come up with that SOP for their staffs, then they would be able to train the staffs to carry things out. But the advantage of this is that you find that retail staffs do get rotated from branches to branches quite frequently. So when they change from one branch to another, because the SOP is given from the head office themselves, the habits actually prevail. And this will also reduce the kind of responsibility from the mall asset operates team, because they will not be as clear about what is going on in the shop as the head office would know better. Okay, so I have tried to quickly go through a lot of the recommendations, and then and what are the opportunities that's available. As you can see here, this really summarizes a lot of what we have in the report, and also the next step that we hope to be able to continue to do this work with the other industries, retail industries, probably individually. So before I end off, I'll just like to say that waste has to be segregated in order to achieve a good quality recycled product. This may seem as an inconvenience to segregate, and that's because we are treating waste as something we do not want. But if we could just change our mindset and to see it as something, as a material for the next product, I would then say that it makes a lot of sense that we ensure that the segregation is being well done and being very pure. So as you will see in the report, the recommendations are targeted and according to the waste streams, because that's the nature of waste management. There's no one single solution for waste if we want to carry out material circularity. And with that, I thank you for your kind attention and hand it back to Akila.
Thanks so much, Yvonne, for sharing those really interesting insights from the study. I do see that there are lots of questions coming in from the Q&A, so please do keep them coming, and we'll respond to them as much as we can. So for the next agenda item, and I guess one of the more important ones, is that I'm delighted to welcome our next speakers and hear from them their perspectives on waste in retail. So I'm happy to introduce to you Stephanie Baitin, Head of Market Transformation here at WWF-Singapore, who will be moderating the session. She'll be joined by 3 guest speakers. Now, can I please invite our speakers to switch on your cameras and unmute yourselves? Thank you. Over to you, Steph.
Thank you very much, Akila, for the introduction. And thanks, Yvonne, for triggering us to change our mindset to really treat waste as a resource, as a material resource. I think that's a really important one. Yeah, I'm very happy to moderate this panel discussion. We have around half an hour for that. And before we kick off, I would like to shortly introduce our 3 distinguished speakers. So we have today Yanwen Lo. She is the head of marketing and corporate responsibility at The Body Shop. Then we have Greg Gillen, who is the senior vice president, venue development, Live Nation, and Jenny Ko, who is the head of asset operations at Lendlease. Very good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining this panel.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for joining.
For having us.
Great. We heard about the main findings of the study and some of the recommendations, and obviously we heard about from the government as well. Now we would really like to get like the business perspective from the landlords and from the tenants and retailers like yourselves on your experiences, and to hear about possible challenges, but also ideas how to improve processes. So Yanwen, I would like to start with you, just to hear what you found like most interesting about the study, and also maybe you can share some relevant experiences from your work. And also there was exciting news that Body Shop just opened a first refillable station at one of your outlets here in Singapore. So we are very excited about that and curious to hear more. Over to you, Yanwen.
Thank you, Stephanie. And also thank you for Yvonne for presenting very insightful results. For me, when I first received this report, I would say that the whole report is very interesting, but I would zoom into what makes me feel very encouraged. I would say that it would be that the recycling rates, the 27% to 29% recorded in 2018 to 2019, which is more than double of the national recycling rate, is very, very encouraging. And it shows to us, myself, that when you do have a target, you set a target for yourself, you work towards it, it's extremely achievable. Because here at the Body Shop, this is what we are doing for ourselves as well when it comes to plastic recycling. I think not surprising to all, we have been on this recycling project since October 2019. So we encourage all our customers to bring back their plastic empties to the Body Shop to recycle. And then for a very start, we give you a small little gift to reward this new behavior. And the results on our end have been extremely encouraging as well. So we have to date, in 1 year, 9 months, recycled 2.4 tons of plastic bottles in our 37 stores in Singapore. So I have to say that that already exceeded our own target by plus 42%. And we hope to increase this further and set more aggressive targets for ourselves. Some of the challenge, as what Yvonne had presented earlier, contamination is one of the main issues. So for us, it's no different. For example, like, when you want to recycle, you cannot see. When you want to recycle a bottle, it needs to be clean and dry. And that itself, at the beginning, took a lot of explanation and education from our store staff to our customers. So that, we don't throw in bottles that still has shower gel, conditioner, body cream into the bin such that it will contaminate the rest of the bottles. But we have since, I'm very happy to announce that we have since overcome that. I would say that our recycling rate of plastic is excellent. It's at about 98%. With very, very low contamination rate. So I'm extremely proud to say that each and every one of our store staff has contributed to this success.
Awesome, thank you so much. And we come back also to this staff engagement on the one side, but also on the consumer angle. I will come back to you. Greg, over to you. Maybe you can share some of your highlights from the study and your experience. Maybe also you can shortly describe how Live Nation operates, because maybe some in the audience might not be familiar.
Look, I suppose we start a little bit on Live Nation. We're the biggest supplier of live content globally, and the biggest ticketing retailer in Ticketmaster globally. So, we bring in about 70% of the live content, be it U2, Coldplay, BTS coming into Singapore. So, we are invested in making sure that our recycling and our energy efficient and our sustainability programs, certainly here in Singapore, where we can be very effective given the size of the industry and the size of the country. We've got a lot of interest in making sure that we are fairly switched on. Globally, we've got some fairly aggressive targets. We want to be 100% renewable energy, by 2030. zero waste to landfill by 2030, and a lot of our festivals are already doing that. So, you know, our Festival Republic in the UK in 2021 have already achieved that, phasing out single-use plastics by the end of this year. And again, a lot of our venues have started through this process, where our European festivals are now looking at reusable cups and in the festival world. So there's a lot of different initiatives that are going on, but some of the challenges that we find is that we find it very hard to have this uniform and consistent across all of our properties in all of our countries because of those waste services that are available to us. So what we might do in the UK or Australia, where we have commercial recycling MRFs that can separate the waste streams and can deal with small levels of contamination, that doesn't exist here. So we have to re-engineer our waste stream. I think, you know, from what I saw at the report, you know, there was a huge percentage of waste, of food waste in those waste streams. So I think there's a great opportunity, you know, to reduce that, and the back of house waste from the tenants as well, getting a consistent approach and getting all those tenants on the same page. You've got a great opportunity to make some big gains there. And I think the last is really looking at how you educate the public and how they approach, you know, these multi-bin stations. You know, I know myself, and we've seen them in our venues around the world. You know, you have these 3 bin stations, but you can see people look at them and go, I don't know where this goes. So that education piece is really important. So I think as much as cleaning up the waste stream is, you know, one of the primary objectives, education is a very close second.
Yeah, I think that the point of keeping it simple for the consumer is an extremely important one that we also heard from Yvonne's sharing and from Jan Wen. So that's super exciting. And yeah, I'm very curious to hear more also how you're phasing out single-use plastic. So I will come back to you on that. Jenny, over to you, just as an asset manager, and you really manage the operations. What are some of the challenges that you face, like you want to increase the recycle rate of your assets, and maybe also how can the findings of the study help you on that journey?
I think first and foremost, we are very glad to partner with WWF in this study and to contribute our parts in terms of data collected that is across our assets in Singapore. So back to your questions in terms of like challenges that we face, I think quite evident from the study, the lack of granular data on our waste recycling and how we dispose our waste. It is crucial in helping us to improve our recycling rate. I think the data has shown that at Lendlease, we do recycle close to 30% of the waste. That is already more than double of what national average is. But we still have about 70% to go. And that I would think is quite a big gap. I think everybody has been talking about education. Education, in my opinion, is two prongs because you need to educate the public. We talk about, you know, simplifying all the signages, making it easy for patrons to know where to drop what in the correct bin. I think that will help us as more managers to effectively segregate the waste. And I think the next problem is tenants. My partners in my malls, to educate them in terms of F&B tenants, segregate your organic, non-organic waste in the kitchen. That help us as well. And I think is the education, because ground people, the ground staff, do not realize or probably not able to appreciate how they can contribute in this cause of making our planet a more palatable place for us to live in. That little part of segregating the waste goes a very long way. I think last but not least, the challenge is probably now it is not compulsory, it is not regulatory for anyone to be on this journey. And I think it takes a lot. I think probably if it can be regulated, that probably will help us as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really important aspect, and I think the speech of Dr. Amy Ko was also quite encouraging that the government is putting a lot of focus on that. So we hope that like joining forces, this can really shift the needle. I want to stick just a moment on the consumer end, Yan Wen, with you, because we also launched a study in March with Accenture and WWF-Singapore that really proved that the consumer is looking for more sustainable options and products and services, and the consumer want to behave more sustainable, but is lacking the opportunities. Now, the Body Shop has offered quite a number of those opportunities. You have a charge for bags, so to encourage bring your own bag. You have the refill station. Do you feel that the consumer is like appreciating it, like to go the extra mile and like sacrifice a little bit of convenience? Are they ready here in Singapore?
Definitely, our Kick the Bag initiative started in August 2017. So it's been we are in August now. So it's been a good 4 years. We didn't start with super high results like how we have now. And it takes a lot of, it's kind of a cultivation of the habit of getting into bringing your own bag every time you shop. And fast forward 4 years, right now, I can share that 70% of our customers who come and shop, they bring their own bag. So this is very encouraging results. We still have a good 30% to go. We have set for ourselves a target that the best would be 80%, at least 80% of our customers bring their own bags. It's good that there's always hope and opportunity to improve, but we are happy that our customers have certainly been on this journey together with us.
That sounds great. And Greg, over to you, because I want to stick to your phasing out single-use plastics, because I think especially in the event industry, that's quite an ambitious goal. And you will have a new venue at 313 Somerset. I think the rendering behind you is actually from that venue. So maybe you can just share how you really want to manage this in an environment like Singapore. What are your plans? You're on mute.
There you go. As a part of the design process of designing it and building the venue, we take the sustainability into consideration for every element. The building itself can be picked up and reused after the 10-year lease is over. So we've designed that in a way so it is modular and we can put it somewhere else. So right down to that. But so we've started a process of designing our waste stream. Where luckily enough we can control our waste stream. So we realised very, very early that commercial recycling doesn't really exist here in Singapore. So we've had to look at what are our other options. And so we started with an elimination piece first. So how do we avoid lots of bottles, cans, those sorts of things? So we're designing all of our concessions to be on tap. So whether it's post-mix, whether it's beers on tap, nothing's going to be sold in bottles and decanted, where we can avoid that. And then we look at the waste and what we're going to serve across the counter. So we've decided that currently the best option for us is to go down the biodegradable path, because then we can have a front of house bin where it is just a single bin, because that food waste doesn't contaminate that waste stream. It goes off to a digester. In other parts of the world, we look at 100% recycling products. So again, we have that commingled bin, and we work with our waste contractors and the MRF operators so that they can deal with a small amount of contamination in that food waste. And we use things like plastic bags, and when our cleaners take the bag out of the bin, they'll have a quick look in that clear plastic bag and make a determination as to whether or not that bin or that bag is contaminated. If it is, it's got to go into a different waste stream, because what we don't want to do is contaminate the whole packer. So we design our waste stream to suit what services are available to us here in Singapore. So we have the lofty goals of zero waste to landfill and everything going to compostable. And we work very, very hard with Lendlease around that chain of custody of that waste. We want to know where it goes. We want to know how it's processed and where it ends up. So the use of technology and the QR codes that we're talking about, so that we can report that. We want to forward report our objectives, and then on a regular basis through the venue, whether that's through our internal LED screens, our external screens, tell people this is what we've achieved this month, and this is how we're tracking against our objectives. So it is public, and we're held accountable for what we do. And then that goes all the way down to our cleaners, our promoters, everyone coming into the venue itself. They've got to sign up to our KPIs and the waste streams. So there's that education piece as well. So we're trying to simplify the waste stream. So it takes a little bit out of the public's hands of, what do I do with this container? It's in a bin, it goes there, everything's compostable. So that's the way we're trying to do it here in Singapore.
Sounds awesome. I think what I'd like to ask a bit more is the piece of like inspiring or nudging like your vendors and suppliers and your contractors. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you're already saying, if you want to work with me, here are the rules, and you are sort of like getting this knowledge and this expectation throughout your supply chain. Do you really put it in your contracts that they have to behave in a certain way?
Yeah, it absolutely will be. And as a part of the RFP responses, they've got to explain to us what they do in their business. How do they educate their staff? It's not just what you do when you come to my venue, because I don't want a contractor changing their way of work just because they come to ours. I want it to be close to their heart. We want to align with partners who genuinely have a belief in sustainability. And that's, working with Lendlease, they've been fantastic in exactly that way. They've back-to-back their goals within our lease. So, there's a legal mechanism through the leases and through the contracts, but also we don't want to be pulling that black and white of contract. We want to partner with people who this is core to their business.
Awesome, thank you. And Jenny, maybe to come to you, you mentioned a similar system. You also have a green lease in Lendlease. So this sounds quite similar. Maybe you can share a little bit more on that before we are also looking at the questions from the floor, because I think there are many.
Okay, so I think we are very glad to have partners like Live Nation, Body Shop, IKEA, the big corporates who have it in their company vision in sustainability, in joining us on the effort to make this. So we do have a green lease in place with all our tenants, okay? But it is this recycling program that we have put in place with them is more voluntary. Although we do have specific waste management clause within the agreement, but it is still not regulatory. I go back to the fact that, it is not, they do not have an obligations from a regulatory point to fulfill or be aligned with us in terms of our specific targets. We first piloted, or rather introduced the green lease when we opened 313 back in 2009. Back then we started to, it's very new, it's a very new concept, a green lease in the industry. We had to educate our tenants. We have to, work with them, explain with them what does all this means. And we do our part. It is not just a one-sided where, only the tenants do, but we also have our obligations. We clearly state out what do we need to do and what we hope that they can do as well. So we had a string of incentives to get them on board. And of course, I talk about the education to let them understand what is the journey all about.
Awesome, thank you so much. We also have a related question from the floor that talks about reusable takeaway and container rental services that are available. And that is one challenge that these services often face is looking at the spaces of the malls for them to rent and drop off these reusables. So I think the question is more for Jenny to ask whether this is something that Lendlease is open to explore, to provide those spaces to bring back reusable containers and takeaways.
I think Lendlease is always looking for viable ideas. We will be happy to explore. So perhaps the person who actually have the initiative can get in touch with me.
Okay, cool. We can pick this up then and maybe send the answer like directly. Cool. I'm just looking at the other questions. There is one question for the Body Shop from Celia. So she's asking whether Body Shop has further plans to reduce the waste in the first place, because obviously recycling is not always possible. And also plastics can also not be recycled indefinitely. So maybe you can share also from other countries where these initiatives are already a bit more progressed. What are some of the other options to reduce the waste in the first place? I think the refillable station is surely one option, but maybe you also have other experiences to share.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. So Stephanie, you're absolutely right. Because we are in the beauty and personal care business, it's inevitable that we have to contain our products in plastic containers. So the refill station, which just launched, is one of the initiatives that we really would like to, again, cultivate in our customers, because the refillables will be refilled in aluminum bottles, and aluminum bottles are very long lasting. They can last 2 to 3 years, for as long as you take good care of them. So I would say that that is one of the global initiatives that we have to reduce the use of plastics.
Awesome. Thank you, Yan-Wen. There is another question for Greg, actually, from Gabriel. He's asking whether Live Nation has explored any collaborations with companies to fully circularize the materials. So, for example, if companies that can upcycle waste products for other useful products, so really closing the loop.
Look, I think certainly in places like Australia, we do have a closing the loop system, which we work with people like Visi, where the waste goes out, gets sorted at MRF, and gets remanufactured and comes back to us. We're in the infancy of our program here in Singapore. Our venue should be open around May next year. So we're about to start the construction period. So we're open to all sorts of different initiatives in how we reduce our footprint as such. So yeah, definitely happy to have a look at different options. I'd love to see Singapore create a MRF, or a materials recovery facility, so it's not being sent across the causeway, and that contaminated waste can be appropriately dealt with here. But I think until then, we have to work with industry to work out what's the best way to design our waste streams and process, the waste that we're producing.
Cool. You also said in our pre-call quite interesting sentence that says simply it's financially efficient to reduce waste streams and operations. And I think this is always, people doubt that being more sustainable, then they are afraid of the costs. Maybe you can elaborate on this point a little bit, just to inspire the rest on.
Yeah, well, I mean, particularly in COVID areas where we're all looking to save operational costs, so if we look at something like our digital ticketing, we're no longer printing hard tickets or printed home tickets. It's all digital. It's on your phone. When we're looking at the elimination of waste, so whether that's serving out of kegs or post mix, we don't have that packaging there. And then we go right down to LED fixtures, energy efficient fixtures and fittings, and fresh air top up. So we're using more fresh air than refrigerated air. All of those types of things we are designing into our venue now. One, to meet COVID regulations, but two, that minimises our emissions. Again, we don't have access to renewable power here in Singapore. So we've got to look at, okay, well, where's our power coming from? And then again, that reduction of minimising it, getting out, encouraging all of our patrons to take public transport as opposed to drive their vehicles to one of the many parking stations in Orchard. We're lucky enough that we're serviced by 2 train stations that can get rid of about 4,000 people in any one exchange of trains, and bus stops and grabs and all sorts of different transport nodes. So it'll be a big part of our communication out to our patrons to say, look, consider your journey, consider how you behave at the venue, because we as an entity, as a venue management team and as a global corporate team, we're saying to you, here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's our corporate goals, here's our venue goals, and we want you to help us achieve those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we are reaching the end of this session. I wish we had more time because I'm learning a lot. So thanks for all of you. I would like to ask a last question to each one of you. Maybe just a very quick wrap up to each one of you. What was the most interesting part of the session, or just one thing that you want to take back that inspired you or that you want to explore further? Let's kick off with Jenny.
I think the study has provided very meaningful insight and lots of opportunities that we can explore. And I think it's also great to hear Greg and Yan-Wen and their sharings. I think that gives me another opposite side of view on how my partners, my tenants, how they conduct their business, how do they contribute and all this. I think that is my key takeaway.
Awesome. Then Yan-Wen, you want to go next?
Yes, so I would say that having seen all of you here participated in this, I feel very hopeful and I feel very inspired to know that there are like-minded partners. And I believe if we can work together, do things together, we are better together.
Thank you. Like WWF says, together possible, right? So Greg, you have the last word.
I think that's exactly it, is that, we're working with like-minded neighbours, and I think, and our landlord, and also the government, who has that, fairly bolshy 2030 plan. So everyone's pulling in the same direction. But I think that if we do have those common goals, we can accelerate the use of technology a lot quicker. We can accelerate the education piece a lot better. And we're not trying to be Robinson Crusoe and reinvent the wheel by ourselves. So there is a lot more to be gained in working in partnership. And that's not just with the tenants and our landlord, that's also with the public, and getting them feeling good about the recycling process or the sustainability process. So I think that's, I think there's a lot of easy wins and stuff that we can do together to accelerate, a good win here in the next 2 to 3 years.
Awesome. Yes, we will definitely continue the conversations with you, but also with all the viewers out there. Thanks for joining us, for all of you today, and sharing your insights, obviously. And I'm handing back over to Akila to close the session, but the panelists, please stay on for the closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steph, and the panelists, for such an exciting discussion. I really loved the 3 key takeaways that each of you had, in terms of making this, a really exciting collaborative action across all the different stakeholders in the retail industry. And that just brings me to the conclusion of today's event. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Today we heard perspectives from the retail industry, from the government, as well as from the NGO. And we do hope that you take away 2 key things. Firstly, obviously, to read the report, as well as to use the findings of the study, so that we can all work together to raise the industry's waste management efforts and eventually achieve circularity in retail. And secondly, of course, the importance of collaboration across stakeholders. I think the panelists have emphasized this. Dr. Amy Koh has emphasized this. Everyone who has spoken here today has emphasized the importance of taking action together, and hope that we can pull forward to eventually achieve Singapore's Zero Waste Master Plan. So we are now at the end of the event. I'm so sorry that we're not able to respond to all of the questions that we received, but we'll get through them and see whether we can respond to some of them over email. And we would definitely love to continue the conversation. Please do reach out to us at markets@wwf.sg. I believe Chester will be posting a link of our website and contact email as well in the chat. So thank you everyone for joining us, and have a very, very good afternoon today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.